Welcome back aboard Arabella. Nestled into their winter home on Cape Cod, Robin, Steve, and Akiva start out this week encountering their biggest storm yet. And after that, Steve gets to work on the needed repairs that Arabella has been collecting lately. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed the journey so far, consider supporting us on Patreon. Click the link in the description to find out more.
So we've got our massive storm lines tied off. Get the middle of the line wrapped around the cleats. And then both of them run aft. And then we commandeered some big old fenders. So you can recognize our littler ones in there that have been fine so far, but this was a bit much. Really leaning on these ones up here. And I've got them situated where the chain plates are, because inside the boat, there's basically an extra frame where that chain plate is. So that part of the boat is kind of double framed with sawn frames where the chain plates go and the steam vent frames. So that's really strong. And by having these three fenders all in a line, real big one a little bit lower, and then our small one, this creates a nice big squishy spot for the boat to rub up against. And then up at the stem, we've got a really big line on the Samson post to the dock. And we've got another little line here. This is more or less backup. Sails are lashed down. Tender and paddle boards are still up. And it's blowing pretty hard. But so far, all is well. And I've been real happy with this tow rail. It makes tying off the fenders real easy. Get them right where we want them. A little later in this episode, we're going to get to fixing this broken chunk of tow rail here, where the damage is pretty easy to see and the path to fix it is pretty straightforward. But as the list of things to fix grow on Arabella, I need to make sure that I stay on top of my own mental well-being. And I'm not a piece of wood, so the path forward is not always as clear-cut, and it's not something I can always do on my own. BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video, has been a perfect solution for Robin and I. From right here on Arabella, we've been able to access our own licensed therapist. I have a little experience with therapy, but it's been a while. It's been really easy getting started up again and trying it out in a stress-free way here at home, over the phone when we don't have good Wi-Fi connection, and a video call when we do have a good connection. It was a simple questionnaire to get started, and once that was filled out, BetterHelp says that most people get matched to one of their 30,000 available therapists within 48 hours in most cases. From there, we were easily able to figure out a schedule for sessions and get started. If you think you might benefit from therapy, think about giving BetterHelp a try. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Acorn. Clicking that link helps support the channel, and it'll give you 10% off the first month as well, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you.
That afternoon, the storm gained intensity. The wind and wave direction also shifted and were now coming from the south, right into the mouth of the harbor. As the sea state increased, Steve grabbed the camera for a few shots before getting into gear to go deal with the boat. He started by tying down the tiller that was flying around, and after experiencing a few hard knocks onto the dock, he went around the marina looking for any way to soften the blows.
We've been getting worked.
So I cut all the fenders off Victoria and lashed them to the tow rail and ran down the dock and commandeered all of the fenders that I was able to that weren't being used. I assume they're left from people who have their boats here in the summer. So I borrowed them. I hope they don't mind. But now we're padded off enough that we're not slamming. There were a few times there we had some wind and some waves coinciding, and we were bumping up against the dock pretty hard. And very, very thankful for that locust shear strike and covering board, because they were getting hit pretty hard. This is our first real good blow. I think Rockland wasn't too bad. I would say this was worse than Rockland so far.
Oh,
this is
way worse.
the biggest winter storm. Robin says way worse. Way worse than Rockland. It's a lot nicer out here today. Holy smokes. Yesterday got pretty rugged. That dock there, that was totally underwater yesterday. You could just see the very tips of the white pylons. And let's go check out some of the carnage. You know, you were cooped up all day yesterday. You were out of your mind today. We ended up peeling Victoria off. I'm just trying to reduce the windage a little bit. Taking the sails down probably would have been a good call, but I don't know how much of a difference it really would have made. They're bundled up pretty tight. If we were leaving the boat, I absolutely would have taken the sails off, because if one of them got loose, that could be real bad news bears. But since we were on the boat, I felt like that wasn't as big of a deal. Because if they did get loose, we would know immediately, and we could come out and throw a line and hopefully wrangle them in before things got too much worse. None of this is neat and pretty, because this was all done as the boat was rocking and slamming. And as the boat pushed away, I would shove a fender in and tie it off and let the boat get pushed away and shove another fender in. And they were getting tossed in and out, and that tow rail damage, that's left over from Rockland. I just haven't fixed it yet. That didn't happen this time. Victoria's paint, since it's anti-fouling paint, washed off, made a pretty big mess on the deck and the housetop. So I gotta get that cleaned up. And maybe when we repaint Victoria, we'll do it with topside paint, and then that doesn't happen. So let's start pulling these out, I guess. Glad for these big beefy boys. Thank you very much, Josh. They are coming in handy. Now let's see what we have, if anything, for damage. And I'm gonna go put everybody's fenders back that I borrowed, or commandeered, I guess, because I didn't ask. I just ran around and snagged them. We do have two that we need to replace, though. And these were older. They look kind of sun-bleached. I'm not super surprised they didn't make it, but somebody's gonna come back in the spring to a pair of brand new fenders. I'm not psyched to pay for that, but I did take them, I did use them, and I did break them, so it is my responsibility to replace them. So these ones I left tied together and just kept shoved in there. Well, I'm glad we only popped 2 borrowed fenders. I really don't have the funds to be buying everybody new fenders, so thankfully it's just 2. Yeah, it looks fine. It looks totally fine. So, beating against the dock, and really the worst damage we have is a couple bits of chipped paint and some scuff on the tow rail. So, you know, all in all, considering what we went through, I would call that all right. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a success. I feel like coming through with no storm damage and not being out here and trying to shove fenders in would have been a success. But there's no real damage. A little bit of paint, a little bit of sanding, a little bit of oiling, and we'll be good to go. All right, who's got the eagle eye? Who spots what's broken? There's something on the mizzen that we broke going from the Cape Cod Canal over to here in Harwich Port. Do you see it yet? And as I'm getting closer, I'm sure a few of you have some guesses by now. But here is our makeshift field repair. So our mizzen boom broke. So there's our mizzen sheet. So that pulls it down to the traveler. And yes, I need to replace that shackle. It's on the list of things to do this winter. So it broke good ways forward of that. And it broke on a jibe. The boom came over, we heard a crack, and then this split here was opening and closing and opening and closing with the wind and the sails. But I think partially the lacing that holds the sails on here helped hold the two halves together, and they never fully separated. And we looked at it and realized that the crack kind of runs into the middle of the boom. It didn't go all the way through. So I ran down below, and I grabbed some of this nylon line, and it ain't pretty because the boat was bouncing all around and I was sitting on the hatch by the tiller. But I got this laced, and you can see it's pretty tight. And got that wrapped around, and with each wrap, the boom got more and more and more stable. And tied it off, and we finished up the rest of the day. Threw a bunch of tacks, threw a bunch of wind, and I rode it out just fine. Very fortunate for the way that it cracked. This isn't along a glue line. This is a solid stick that came from Victoria. So who knows what trauma it had in the past. So we can glue this for now, since it's basically a giant scarf joint, and continue sailing for the little day sails we're going to do this winter. And at some point this winter, we'll get a new mizzen boom made up, which thankfully isn't a giant task. It's a pretty simple little stick. So let's pull these lacings off. I'll show you what this looks like with it undone, and get that sail out of the way and see if we can get this repaired. So, not much force, and that crack's opening up. So, let's see if we can get this fixed good enough to still do a little sailing safely this winter while we get the new boom made. I just bundled the sails up real tight, pulled them away from where the glue is going to be, undid one section of the lazy jacks, wrapped them around the sail, tied them back to themselves. I taped everything that I don't want glue to get on, such as the lines and the rest of the boom. So let's get this fixed. can really only get it in this end here. And even then, I don't know if I'm gonna get it all the way down into the middle. So this is not, repeat, this is not a permanent repair. This is a, maybe we get a nice day and we want to go to the vineyard repair. So we're gonna let that dry and then take the hose clamp off, take the tape off, and I'm gonna put a couple permanent lashings on this. So there's another little crack here, head that direction. And then, you know, I said this continues down to about here, but I only have glue to about here. So I'm gonna come back and put a lashing down here, another lashing here, and another lashing probably here. And I'll set those lashings in epoxy and make them a permanent part of this boom. And I think between the glue holding this end together and a couple lashings, we'll be good to go for a while. Certainly wouldn't want to go anywhere super far or use the sail in any real bad conditions, but I think that'll let us go out for a little day sail and test the stack packs and do some things like that as we get some little projects done. And we'll find a weekend here and get into a shop and make a new mizzen boom. And that's about all it'll really take. It'll take us just a couple days. It's not a huge thing to remake. Well, I guess it's about time we get this fixed. So when we were in Rockland almost a month ago now, we got tossed in a storm. I sprung us off the dock on this side, and at the end of the storm, this was free and in the water. The covering board is totally fine, the shear strake is totally fine, the bronze brackets didn't go anywhere, get damaged. So really all I have to do is put in a new little piece here. And thanks to Josh from Schooner Hindu, we have some beefier locust blocks to go in. So instead of having 1 inch of thickness, we will have 2 inches of thickness. So that'll make a big difference. And then when these go in, new pieces, I'm gonna scarf joint them so that it gets glued. So not only when you're pulling on this, you'll be pulling on a full piece of tow rail top and bottom, because it'll be scarfed in essentially one, and you'll be pulling on a beefier chunk of locust. So I think that will do the trick. So I don't know if I'll finish this today after doing the mizzen boom, but we'll get cranking on it. First thing's gonna be to grab the tools and cut this old section out and free up my lignum vitae pieces, because I wanna reuse those. There's nothing wrong with them. Gotta get this cleat pulled off and get this taken apart. The sound of that leaf blower in the background is not too obnoxious. We got the tow rail cut out here. I need to cut a scarf in here and a scarf in here, put in a new strip of tow rail top and bottom, and then fit that blocking But I'm gonna go see tomorrow in Granby what we have for oak, so I don't have to do a whole bunch of resawn, make life a little bit easier there. And when we get back, I can scarf these in, put in the backing block, and finish up the tow rail repair. I'd really like to just keep chugging on this today, but it's gonna be a lot more work and effort trying to resaw that than just picking some stock up that's much closer, and I know we got it there. So go work on a few other things. So this is looking good. The glue is still a little bit tacky. It's not very warm temperatures. It's warm enough for this to cure. It's just gonna take quite a while. This is the Thixo, not the Thixo Fast Cure. So we'll just leave this clamped and taped overnight and see how it feels tomorrow. Happy New Year! 2023 was an insane amount of firsts. First for me, for Arabella, for Robin, for Akiva. Launching, sailing, storms, bringing the boat up to Maine. Being in Camden was a little dream in itself. I remember being in college and looking down at the bay and thinking, man, how cool would it be to have a boat in that harbor? And there we were, climbing in Camden, looking down on the boat I built. Going to New Mexico, getting engaged. It's been a really wild year. So I'm sure 2024 is going to have plenty of surprises and twists and turns. I'm sure there will be lots of highs and lots of lows. And I can't wait to take you along that journey with us. Hopefully a lot more sailing and a bit less boat building, but there'll definitely still be boat building to do. And thank you for following and joining us on this crazy journey, and we're gonna keep it going as long as we can. So here's to rocking an exciting 2024.
As promised, new fenders. So I've got 2 round ones to replace the ones we popped, and 2 long cylindrical ones, which we'll give a try for our own use for the winter, and maybe pick up a couple more. These weren't cheap. It was a little over $300 for the 4 fenders, but it's a lot better than any real damage, and it'd be nice if there's even half of what we had to be better padded off. And it'd be a pretty big bummer if I didn't replace the ones we popped. So it is what it is. Could be a lot worse.